There are moments in life that shatter you into pieces, without you even realizing you were already cracked. That Friday night, when I got home early after an exhausting week at the office, I never imagined I would find my wife Valeria sitting on the sofa with a glass of wine in her hand and a smile she hadn't given me in months. We had been married for 8 years, and although the last 2 had been difficult, I was still clinging to the hope that things would get better. I worked as an accountant in a medium-sized company. I earned enough to pay the bills, the mortgage, the utilities, but there was never much left over. Valeria had always been demanding about her lifestyle, but lately her tastes had become impossible to satisfy. Designer handbags, dinners at expensive restaurants, weekend trips that I couldn't afford. Every time I asked her to cut back on expenses, she looked at me with contempt, as if I had asked her to live in poverty. That night, however, she seemed in a good mood, and I, naive as I was, thought maybe the time had come to reconnect. I sat next to her on the sofa and tried to take her hand, but she gently pulled it away, as if my touch bothered her. "Valeria, can we talk?" I asked in a tired voice. "I feel like lately we've been very distant. It's been weeks since we've had a real conversation." She took a long sip of wine and looked at me with those green eyes that once seemed beautiful to me, but now only reflected coldness. "You're right, Marcos," she said in a strangely calm tone. "We need to talk. There are things I can't keep quiet about anymore." My heart skipped a beat. For months I had noticed the signs, the messages she hid, the nights out with friends that lasted until dawn, the new lingerie she never wore with me, the excuses to avoid any intimacy. But like every man who doesn't want to face the truth, I had convinced myself I was being paranoid, that my financial insecurity was making me see ghosts where there were none. That night, however, the truth was about to destroy me in a way I never imagined. "I've met someone," Valeria said with no emotion in her voice, as if she were announcing she was switching shampoo brands. "His name is Rodrigo. He's a businessman. He has his own import company. We met 6 months ago at a business conference I attended as my boss's assistant. It felt like I'd been hit in the stomach with a baseball bat. 6 months. Half a year of lies, of deception, of making me believe I was the problem. 6 months. That was all I could murmur, with a broken voice. She nodded, taking another sip of wine, as if we were discussing the weather. At first it was just physical attraction, but then we realized we have a lot in common. He understands my need to live well, to enjoy life without counting every penny. Not like you, who every time I want something starts doing the math and complaining that there's not enough money. Every word was a stab. I sat paralyzed, not knowing whether to scream, cry, or just get up and leave, but my body wouldn't respond. I could only look at her, wondering how the woman I had promised to spend the rest of my life would have turned into this cruel, heartless stranger. I tried to process what I had just heard, searching my mind for some logical explanation, some way this could be a misunderstanding. "Valeria, what are you saying? You're telling me you cheated on me for 6 months, that you've been with another man while I worked like a damn slave to keep this house." My voice started to rise, rage mixing with pain. She rolled her eyes, as if my reaction was exaggerated and childish. "Don't be melodramatic. Marcos. Yes, I've been with Rodrigo, and it's been the best decision of my life. Finally, I know what it's like to be with a real man, someone who can give me everything I've ever dreamed of. Do you know how much he earns a month? More than you make in an entire year. He lives in a house in the outskirts with a pool. He has 3 luxury cars. He travels to Europe every 2 months. That's living, Marcos, not this mediocre existence you offer me." Her words were pure poison, but the worst was still to come. She stood up from the sofa, poured herself more wine, and stood in front of me with an expression of superiority I had never seen on her before. "All those handbags, shoes, dresses that bother you so much. Do you know who buys them for me? Rodrigo, the weekend trips I told you were with my friends. They were actually with him. The dinners at elegant restaurants, the spa treatments, everything. His money pays for all my luxuries. You barely cover the bills." That sentence was the straw that broke the camel's back. Something inside me broke for good. I stood up from the sofa, trembling with rage, and looked her straight in the eyes. For the first time in months, maybe years. I felt absolute clarity. You know what, Valeria? I said in a cold voice I didn't recognize as mine. You're absolutely right. I only cover the bills. I cover this house where you live comfortably. I cover the car you drive. I cover the food you eat, the electricity you use, the internet you use to message your lover. I cover all of that, but I'm not going to cover it anymore. She looked at me confused, still not understanding what was about to happen. What do you mean by that? She asked in a mocking tone. I walked to the door, grabbed my jacket and keys, and before leaving I turned to look at her one last time. I mean it's over, Valeria. Tomorrow I'm talking to a lawyer. You can keep your millionaire businessman, because I'm done being your useful idiot who pays your bills, while you have fun with someone else. I hope Rodrigo is willing to take care of everything, because I'm leaving your life for good. I slammed the door on my way out with shattered heart, but with my dignity intact. That night I slept in a cheap hotel, but for the first time in years, I breathed freely. I woke up in that hotel room with an aching body and a strangely clear mind. It was 6 a.m. on Saturday, and although I had barely slept 3 hours, I felt more awake than I had in the last 2 years. My phone had 17 missed calls from Valeria and a dozen messages I didn't bother reading. I turned off the phone, took an ice-cold shower, and went to have breakfast at a nearby cafe. While drinking black coffee and eating scrambled eggs, I began planning every step of my liberation with the precision of a military strategist. First thing was a lawyer, someone who knew how to handle these cases and wouldn't leave me ruined. I remembered my co-worker Alberto had gotten divorced the previous year and had told me about an excellent lawyer, tough as steel, but fair. I turned the phone on just long enough to find her contact, deliberately ignoring the flood of new messages from Valeria. I found the number, called, and to my surprise, lawyer Fernanda Ruiz answered personally even though it was a weekend. Mr. Marcos, Alberto spoke very highly of you. Tell me what you need, she said in a professional and direct voice. I summarized the situation in 5 minutes. 8 years of marriage, 6 months of infidelity, shared assets, and my urgency to get out of this as quickly and cleanly as possible. I perfectly understand your situation. Lawyer Fernanda replied in a tone that conveyed experience and confidence. The first thing you must do is document everything. I need you to email me any proof of the infidelity, messages, photographs, emails, whatever you have. I also need a complete list of your shared assets. The house, the car, bank accounts, debts, everything. Do you have children? I confirmed we didn't, which he considered a legal advantage. Perfect. No children. The process will be faster. Now, this is crucial. From this moment on, do not make any large money transfers. Do not sign anything she puts in front of you, and keep all communication in writing. If she tries to emotionally manipulate you, and believe me, she will try, do not given you are ready for this. I assured her yes, that my decision was final and irrevocable. We agreed to meet Monday morning at her office to officially start the process. When I hung up, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. This was real. There was no turning back. And although it hurt like hell, I knew deep in my soul it was the right thing. I spent the rest of Saturday at the public library researching divorces, marital rights, and asset separation. The more I read, the clearer it became that I had been an idiot for blindly trusting Valeria. Sunday afternoon, I finally decided to listen to the voice messages Valeria had left. The first one, recorded at 2 a.m. on Friday, was pure venom. Seriously, Marcos, you just leave like a coward without finishing the conversation. How pathetic you are. Rodrigo was right. You have no backbone. The second one from Saturday morning already had a slightly different tone. Marcos, stop the drama. I know you're upset, but it's not that big a deal. Come home and let's talk like adults. The third from Saturday afternoon showed some concern. Hey, this isn't funny anymore. Where are you? You have to come back. There are things to sort out here at the house. And the last one from Sunday at noon revealed what really mattered to her. Marcos, the internet bill is due, and I don't know the account password. I also need money for groceries. Don't be childish and come back. I laughed bitterly. There wasn't a single apology, not a hint of remorse, just concern for her comfort and needs. I deleted all the messages without replying to any. Instead, I sent her one single cold and direct text message. Valeria, my lawyer will contact you on Monday. I'm not coming back. All communication from now on will be through legal representatives. Have Rodrigo help you with the internet and groceries. I blocked her number immediately after sending it. Monday arrived with brutal clarity. I took the day off work, something I rarely did. And at 9 sharp, I was sitting in front of lawyer Fernanda in her downtown office. She was about 45 years old, short hair, elegant glasses, and a presence that commanded respect. I reviewed the documents she had sent me by email. She began by placing a folder on the desk. The house is in both names, but you have paid 80% of the mortgage according to the bank statements. The car is in her name, but it was purchased with money from a joint account. This works in our favor. We spent 2 hours going over every detail of my marriage turned into numbers and legal documents. Fernanda was clear and direct. I could file for divorce on grounds of adultery, which would give me an advantage in the division of assets, especially if I could prove that Valeria had used shared money to maintain her extramarital relationship. I need you to review the bank statements from the last 6 months. She instructed me. Look for charges of hotels, expensive restaurants, luxury stores, anything that matches the dates when she was supposedly with her friends. If she paid for any of that with shared credit cards or withdrawals from joint accounts, we have a solid case. I left that meeting with a list of tasks and an action plan. For the first time since Friday, I felt like I had control of my life. That same afternoon, while obsessively reviewing bank statements on my hotel laptop, I found the treasure trove of evidence I needed. Charges at luxury hotels on the weekends. She said she was with friends. Large cash withdrawals the days before her supposed work trips. Purchases at designer stores that exactly matched the handbags and dresses I had seen appear in her closet. Each transaction was a stab, but it was also ammunition for my lawyer. I documented everything meticulously, creating a spreadsheet with dates, amounts, and descriptions. In total, Valeria had spent more than 30,000 pesos from our shared accounts in the last 6 months to maintain her affair with Rodrigo. 30,000 pesos that we could have used to save, to invest in our future, or simply to live with less financial stress. But no, she had squandered it on her lover, while I killed myself working and depriving myself of everything to meet household responsibilities. I emailed everything to Fernanda with a message. Here is proof that my money financed her infidelity. Her response came within minutes. Perfect. With this, the case is practically won. Prepare yourself because when she receives the divorce notification, she will try to destroy you in every possible way. Stay strong. I closed the laptop, ordered room service pizza, and for the first time since Friday, I smiled. It wasn't a smile of happiness, but of satisfaction. I had made the right decision, and now I had the tools to come out of this with my head held high. Tuesday morning, Valeria received the official divorce notification at the house, which we still legally shared, but which I no longer consider my home. Fernanda had hired a professional process server who delivered the documents in person and explained that she had 10 days to respond with her own lawyer. According to what Fernanda told me later, Valeria became hysterical, screaming that this was a misunderstanding, that I was overreacting, that she never thought I would take things so seriously, but the documents didn't lie. Divorce petition on grounds of adultery with attached proof of expenses made with shared money. Request for asset division with compensation for improper use of marital funds, and a formal petition for her to vacate the property within 30 days or start paying the real half of all expenses. 2 hours after receiving notification, my phone, which I had temporarily unblocked for work matters, exploded with calls from Valeria, her mother, her sister, and even some of her friends. I didn't answer any. Instead, I forwarded all the numbers to Fernanda with a message. Crisis management, please. She, as efficient as ever, sent a formal letter to each of those people explaining that any attempt at direct contact with me would be considered harassment and could result in additional legal action. The message was clear. This was not a game, and I was not going to give in. On Wednesday, Valeria finally hired a lawyer, a guy named Duran, who had a reputation for being aggressive but unethical. His strategy was exactly what Fernanda had predicted. trying to paint me as the villain. According to the counterclaim they filed, I was a controlling husband obsessed with money, who had abandoned the marital home without justification, and was now trying to leave Valeria on the street over a simple misunderstanding. They even had the audacity to deny the infidelity, claiming Rodrigo was just a friend and business colleague, and that the hotel and restaurant expenses were related to legitimate work opportunities. Fernanda laughed when she read those documents. They're desperate, she told me during our Thursday meeting. Denying everything is their only strategy because they know they have no real defense. But we have something better than their lies. We have documented truth. Indeed, that same afternoon, Fernanda submitted a second round of evidence that I had obtained with Alberto's help. I had hired a private investigator who in just 3 days managed to photograph Valeria and Rodrigo entering and leaving a hotel together, kissing in the parking lot of an elegant restaurant, and even embracing on the balcony of his apartment. The photos had date and time stamps. They were irrefutable. When Lawyer Duran received them, his response was a long silence, followed by a call to Fernanda, suggesting that perhaps we could reach an amicable agreement. The following 2 weeks were an emotional roller coaster, but I held my position firm thanks to the support of Fernanda, of Alberto, and surprisingly of my own parents, to whom I finally told the whole truth. My mother cried not for the divorce itself, but because I had suffered in silence for so long without telling them anything. That woman never deserved you, my father told me with contained rage I rarely saw in him. We always knew she was materialistic, but we thought she would change with time. We were wrong, son, and we're sorry. Their support was a balm for my wounded soul. Meanwhile, Valeria began to show her true desperation. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that Rodrigo, the supposed millionaire businessman, had started distancing himself from her as soon as he found out about the public divorce. Apparently, the guy was married too, and his wife had discovered the infidelity thanks to the private detective's investigations that I had hired. The investigator, fulfilling his professional ethics, had notified Rodrigo's wife of what he had found. The perfect, luxurious world that Valeria had built with her lover was crumbling, and she was starting to realize that she had traded a stable life for a fantasy that was never real. The desperate calls intensified, but this time they weren't angry. They were pleading. Marcos, I made a terrible mistake. Please, can we talk? Rodrigo means nothing to me. It's you I love. We can go to therapy, start over. Each message was more pathetic than the last, but I remained indifferent. The damage was done, and there was no going back. Finally, for weeks after that fateful Friday night, we reached a divorce settlement that Fernanda described as a crushing victory. Valeria, cornered by the evidence and abandoned by her lover, accepted the terms with almost no negotiation. I kept 70% of the value of the house, which we would put up for sale immediately. She kept the car, but had to assume the remaining loan. I recovered all the money in my personal accounts, and she had to reimburse me 10,000 pesos of the 30,000 she had spent on her affair. Fernanda managed to negotiate that as compensation for emotional damages and improper use of shared resources. In addition, Valeria waived any right to my work pension and my future income. We signed the papers on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in the judge's office, without looking each other in the eye even once. When the judge officially declared our marriage dissolved, I felt as if an invisible chain I had been dragging for years was removed. I walked out of that courthouse in the rain, without an umbrella, completely soaked, but feeling lighter than ever. Fernanda gave me a squeeze on the shoulder before leaving. You did well, Marcos. You kept your dignity until the end. That's more than I can say for most of my clients. I thanked her for everything. I paid her full fees that same day. I had saved every penny during those weeks and walked in the rain to a small bar where Alberto was waiting for me with a cold beer and a brotherly smile. 6 months later, my life is completely different. I moved to a smaller but cozy apartment in a quiet neighborhood. I adopted a stray dog I named Libra because that's exactly what both of us are now, and I reconciled with myself. I got promoted at work thanks to my renewed energy and focus. It turns out that when you're not emotionally destroyed by a toxic relationship, you can concentrate better on your career. I even started occasionally dating a co-worker named Sandra, a simple, honest woman with her feet on the ground, who values the simple things in life, like a home-cooked dinner and a good conversation. I don't know if this will become something serious, but for the first time in years, I feel no pressure or anxiety about the future. As for Valeria, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had to move back in with her parents because she couldn't afford her lifestyle without my financial support or Rodrigo's, who went back to his wife after a scandalous public fight. The last time I saw her was a month ago, at the supermarket. She looked worn out, tired, without the shine of superiority she used to have. She saw me, opened her mouth as if to say something, but I simply nodded politely, kept pushing my cart, and continued with my life. I didn't feel satisfaction or revenge, just indifference. And that indifference, that ability to see her and feel absolutely nothing, was a confirmation that I had healed completely. That Friday night, when I stood up on the sofa and told her it was over, I didn't just end a marriage. I reclaimed my life, my dignity, and my future, and that I discovered is priceless. Yeah,